Hey everyone, Mark with Cardivox Academy here, and this is a video I've been wanting to make for quite some time. It's about the topic, the question, the statement that we've all gotten before. You can't even understand what they're saying. Now don't worry, this isn't going to replace the weekly reaction video, but I've got some extra time today and I figured why not toss it out there because it's actually a pretty interesting statement. You can't even understand what they're saying. Now, the most important thing is that I'm not making any arguments that people should like metal vocals. If you don't like the sound of a metal vocal, there's nothing wrong with that. It's opinion, it's all subjective. Thankfully, there are no laws stating what you have to enjoy. But it is fun to kind of take arguments and deconstruct them just for fun, just to pick them apart and see what's actually being said. So let's just kind of explore it for the sake of exploring it. So the first thing about this statement is that it is absolutely true at many times. With metal vocals, it's quite honestly a fact that many times you cannot understand what is being said. This is a prime example. Now, I don't usually put a whole lot of clips of myself on the channel, but if I'm going to call out inarticulate vocals, I might as well use myself so I don't point any fingers. But that was the end of the song Glioblastoma by Viramia. And yeah, no idea what's being said there, I'm sure. The lyrics are flesh reattached, brain pulsates past the skull. So if the statement is correct, if people say, oh, you can't even understand what they're saying, then our response, if we choose to respond, shouldn't be to disprove that because, well, it's factual. So it's instead to see what they're actually saying. Now, the first way that we can look at it is that they are actually saying that they can't understand what's being said. The words are unintelligible to them. Now, that's fair. But if we can't understand music, if we can't understand what's being said, does that make the music bad? One of my not at all guilty, in fact, very proud musical pleasures is Bollywood. I love Bollywood. I don't understand what's being said because I don't speak the language, or one of the many languages, any of the many languages that are being used, but the music and the dance is absolutely fantastic. Here's one example of one of the best songs I think that's out there from any Bollywood movie. This is Dolare from the movie Devdas. And another one of my favorite examples is a song called Malhari. I don't know how to pronounce the name of the movie. It's Bajirao Mastani. Anyways, it's amazing. Check it out. If that doesn't make you want to hang with the boys, then I don't know what's going to. That gets me so pumped. Now, I'm not just tossing Bollywood clips out there to have fun with them, although I think Bollywood clips are great. My point is that me and anybody else who doesn't speak these languages can't understand what they're saying, but that doesn't make the song bad. In fact, if you think about it, that's just my perception of it. A lot of people can understand what they're saying. So the statement, oh, you can't even understand what they're saying, if I say that, I'm sort of inadvertently saying nobody can understand what they're saying, but plenty of people can. So this is a prime example of how just because you can't literally understand the words that are being said, it's not really a judgment of the quality of the music itself. Now, the second thing that people may mean when they say I can't even understand what they're saying is not that there are words but I am not finding them intelligible. It's that I can't even pick out individual words at all. Good point. So, are there instances where maybe it's hard to pick out individual words and that makes the music bad? Let's check it out. Yes, that was the Angel City Choir doing a rendition of Africa by Toto. Goddamn, it was amazing. But here's the thing. If you know the lyrics to the song, then of course you sort of could subconsciously follow along with what was going on. But if you're not that familiar with the lyrics, you can probably hear that there are words happening in there. You can hear some syllables happening, but you don't really have any conception of what they're saying if you don't know the lyrics. Now, that's kind of the reason I picked this, is because the experience of listening to metal vocals, especially if you've listened to metal for a long time, is that you often can listen through the whole song. You can pick out a word here or there, but you don't always know what's being said. Also, the reason I picked choir music was because now, of course, metal choirs don't really exist, but a lot of the time, to get the effects that we want, and what people are having kind of a negative reaction to, is the fact that we'll stack multiple vocal layers on top of each other to create a thick wall of sound. Again, very different from choir music, but multiple voices happening at the same time is sometimes what people dislike. And so I thought this was kind of a cool example. But the point is, just because you can't pick out the individual words, regardless of whether or not you can understand what they're saying, clearly this song is dope as hell. So, does the argument stand up if you say, well, it doesn't even sound like those are words? Well, there's plenty of music where you can't pull out the individual words, but it's still awesome as hell. And then finally, one phrase that we may have heard, which is similar to this, is it just sounds like a bunch of gibberish, or some variation of that. I am going to argue that some of the best singing that humanity has ever come up with sounds like a bunch of gibberish. And I would like to give you Exhibit A. That was Ella Fitzgerald being an absolute monster of a jazz vocalist. And, she's not saying words, but that is such a celebration of the human voice in general. I hear that and I'm just like, oh man, that leads me into my next point. Sometimes we want to celebrate the voice more than we want to convey a literal message. So what I mean by this is that words and language hit our minds, and then we have a judgment call about them. They're symbols, and then they're references. You say cat, I get an image in my head. Sometimes maybe you just want to express emotion, but you don't really want words to get in the way. You want somebody to feel the rawness of the emotion, and that emotion to interpret into their body. This, for me, she wasn't saying the words, I feel so joyful, it's a beautiful day, birds flying high, you know how I feel, dragonfly out in the sun. No, she wasn't saying any of that, although I do like the lyrics from that song. Another jazz song. But joy and happiness and exuberance certainly came across. So she conveyed emotion to me through her voice without having to say words, and I think that that's a very cool thing that we can do with the human voice. Another thing that I think is important is that we have to understand that just as our voice can make beautiful singing noises, la, making gurgly metal voices, is an extension of that instrument's capabilities. It's not being used incorrectly. It's not cheating. It's not anything like that. It is taking the voice and moving it to a different boundary to express emotion. Now, for a lot of people who don't listen to metal and listen to a lot of vocals with singing, to them, and this is where we as metal fans have to understand that the perception is different, and their perception is not wrong, just different than ours. they may hear it and say, what do you mean convey emotion? It's all completely the same. It's all maximal all the way across. And that is to a degree understandable. But at the same time, when you listen to metal pretty frequently, especially a lot of metal singing, you learn the different nuances that different vocalists do. Like Dickie Allen rolling his R's, like Alex Terrible really spitting and pushing those lows out, especially in certain parts of the song to accentuate what's going on. You learn that there is storytelling in metal vocals because the human voice is so many things working together. Just because you're making one sound doesn't mean you're limited, or overly limited, I should say, in the way that you articulate it. So that being said, we can kind of wrap it up here. When somebody says to us, well, that's not real music, you can't even understand what they're saying, what should our response be? So that's when you just sort of smile, think to yourself that you know that they're wrong, and say, that's understandable. What kind of music are you into? Shung ding boom boom bing ding 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 ah shung ding boom boom ding 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 ah boom ding 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 ding